Hey y'all, this is AL Thick Madame, and this is the recap review for the last days of Ptolemy Gray. Now, I very well might be mispronouncing it. I apologize in advance, but to me, as far as my hearing is concerned, throughout this show so far, with only 2 episodes airing already, to me, it seems as though everybody pronounces that name slightly different. So I'm like, hey, it is what it is. Now, before I ever even heard anybody say it, I thought it was going to be pronounced Tomei, with the L basically being silent or whatever, because I think that I saw something while I was in school a long time ago where it was a astronomer, somebody discovering something, a philosopher, or somebody with that particular name, whether it is considered to be the first or the last, I don't know. But I think that in this show, they pronounced it along the lines of Ptolemy or Ptolemy. Like, it's just weird. I don't know. But I'm not trying to butcher it because I hate when people butcher my name. But in my defense, my name is literally pronounced the way that it is spelled. Anyway, I digress. Look here. So I know a lot of y'all hate when I wear black lipstick, but I love it. So every now and again, I pull it out and throw it on. I braided my hair. Child, it was a struggle because I'm used to the old way of doing braids, which is you get how much hair you gonna get, and that's all you need. Not adding. But I mean, it is what it is. I'm gonna see how it stay, see what it do. I don't know. I'm not used to this. But I did it. It's done. Hopefully I can at least allow it to stay for a month. All right, now let's go ahead and get into this video, y'all. Okay, so I must say that when I first heard about this show, I saw like flyers or whatever posts. And I just saw the picture that y'all see as the thumbnail. And so I was like, okay. And so I didn't know if it was going to be something science related or whatever, because I'm very, very, very into science. So I was like, okay, this might be something dealing with biology, science, or something like that. Cool. Let me see. So imagine my surprise when I turn it on. The first person I see is Samuel L. Jackson. I said, oh, y'all done went off. I saw his name. If I'm not mistaken, I saw his name come across the screen before I saw his face. So I was like, oh, he got something to do with this? Oh yeah, this finna be good. I don't feel like he finna put his time and energy into something if it's not gonna be good. So I'm like, okay then, let's see what's going on. So then, like, the way that it came on, I was just like y'all, you have to see the cinematography leading up to it actually even coming on. So when it first come on, we see the main character, who is Ptolemy Gray, Grey, and we see him and he's like at home and he got this gun and he has a tape player and he talking about I hate that I gotta do it like this, but at first I'm thinking, oh, he finna kill himself, and then the next thing I'm like, well, dang, is he gonna kill somebody? Because, like, the way he was talking, y'all, I was just like, what is going on? Like, what is really going on? And I mean, he just set it off because he was just like, everybody is depending on you. They mad because I put you in charge of my affairs or whatever. And I'm like, what happened? But he, took a little drink and all this other stuff. And so, like, he really is, I'm like, okay, why is he making this recording? So after all was said and done, he get a knock at the door. And so he trying to figure out who it is. And they were like, you know who this is. He was like, well, the door is open. And I'm like, what? So then we end up seeing something telling us that pretty much was 2 months later. So whatever gonna happen between now and then is what we about to see on this show. So now we're going to present day. This is March of 2021. Like, this is like very current. And he at his house and he lives pretty much like somewhat of a hoarder a little bit, but not really. It's like really, really junked up. and it's like organized chaos as far as I'm concerned. Um, so I'm like, okay. And he looking real rough. His hair ain't done. And, you can tell he ain't combed his hair. And he just be sitting around the house. He got the news on, like typical people who are like of his age, because he is an older person or whatever. And it is what it is. He watching the news. So, it seems as though he is having a flashback or something going on. And he's having these moments. And I'm like, what's going on? Is reality happening right now, or is this something going on in his mind? Is he half asleep? What's going on? So he get a knock at the door, in reality, in this time, and it is his before even that happened, he's having these flashbacks where he looked like he back in slavery time or he's somewhere, and it's just terrible. It's just like the stuff that nightmares somewhat are made of. And I'm like, what is going on? But we see a house being set ablaze. I'm like, what happened? And like, you could tell he's very, very scared. A lot is going on. It's just too much. So fast forward to what's actually happening. He has this moment where his great nephew, Reggie, which is the name of the episode, Reggie. His great nephew, Reggie, then came to the house, and he seems like kind of like a type of person that I was to my uncle, who is now deceased. Like I told y'all before in one of my other videos recently, that I was like the only person that was coming around to my uncle doing stuff for him. And I mean, he had money to burn, and so he would just give me a couple of dollars for gas and for me to pay my phone bill with or whatever. From every 2 weeks, it just depends. Like I would fill up my tank with one amount, and then the next time I would like pay my phone bill or whatever. So, I would clean his house for him. Sometimes I wash his clothes if he didn't already get around to doing that. I always took him to go get groceries, go to the bank, pick up medications, all that little stuff. And so, anyway, it's really present day this time, and he has come to, and his great nephew, Reggie, is at the door. And so he has to go through all of this stuff to really realize that it's him. And in my mind, I'm kind of like, okay, I get that, because people be doing the most, and he is older, and anything can happen. Maybe he don't remember him in this moment. And I'm like, okay, it is what it is. But he had to go through a lot just for him to open the door. And he had to ask him like, well, how will I know it's you for real? And he was like, I mean, well, ask me anything. Ask me something that only I would know. So he was like, well, what I always tell you. So he started running off a list of stuff. And some of the stuff he was telling him, he was like, I mean, that's common sense anyway. Like the main thing for him was, he said, every time you get paid, put $10 in your bank account or something like that. He was like, well, that's something everybody should know. That's common sense. But anyway, he ended up, being able to confirm that it was him. He opened the door. He looked through the peephole. And I'm like, he actually had a peephole. So why he didn't look through the peephole? But it is what it is. So eventually he realizes it's him. And he has this thing where he won't move out the door when people are there and trying to get past him to go inside. And so he kind of playing like, oh, okay, yeah, let me get in here. So he has a bag of groceries in his hands. And he was like, oh, you did good. Since the last time I came by, you had 3 whole cans of beans. So he's one of those older people that they like eating beans. I know a whole lot of older people that they live to eat beans. And I'm like, hey, it is what it is. As long as he has an appetite, I guess. So he's, throwing the cans and stuff away. He talking to him. And he was like, we got somewhere we got to be. And, I guess he had some kind of injury to happen to him. And he was like, well, I'm looking for this glass. I got a special glass for you. Every time you come over here, I got a special glass for you. And so I think that the nephew is well aware of what's going on. So he just puts it on top of the refrigerator. So he produces the glass. He was like, see, you must have put it there. You must have put it there. So then, he was like, yeah, I want some ice water. So he done got some water. And he's now sitting down with his uncle, and they talking. And he was like, well, do you want some water? So he takes the glass from him and started drinking the water. And I'm like, I really feel like this is a part of the routine to get him to drink water And, it's just something. So he's talking to him and trying to see if he remembers certain things about certain people. And so I'm like, yes, Lord. I mean, I know y'all probably looking at me like, okay, girl, you rambling, but I can't help it because it's really bringing back memories of things that I've seen with my own two eyes, where there have been people who, they kind of seem like they're slipping away. And there are very few people who are of the younger generation who are willing to go and be with them and be present in their house in the way that it is, and to accept that person for who they are and try to help them. I'm talking about even as small as bringing them groceries or taking them somewhere. Like my grandmama, she used to want me to take her to the stove sometimes and all of that. My paternal grandmama, sometimes she would ask me to take her. And I'm like, of course I'm going to take you to the stove. What? And I mean, she always kind of made it seem like, well, I don't want to be a bird or granny. What is you talking about? I would give anything for my grandmama to still be alive, for to ask me to go somewhere. So anyway, it is what it is. And they're getting ready because they got to go to the doctor. And why are they getting ready to go? He's talking about he's going to pack his wife and kids up and go to Texas. Now, later on, we find out either in the next episode or in this episode that they are in Atlanta, Georgia. If you didn't know before, there's something very specific that happens that allows you to be reminded or to find out that they are in Atlanta. But anyway, he was like, I got to pack the kids up and move. It ain't really, working for us to be here no more. And he wanted to know, would he be okay if he had somebody else to come by and see about him like he's been doing? And so he was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. And I'm like, I don't know if that's true, but okay. So he ended up going to the doctor, and whatever injury he had that happened to his hand, he healed up really, really quickly, which typically is the opposite. The older you get, they always say the older you get, the slower you heal. And he is fixated on Dr. Pepper. Now, see, there are so many, when I tell you there's so many different things in this show that it be doing something to me. And I just be like, wait a minute, this is too much. Now, my daddy lived for Dr. Pepper. I don't know what for, but he lived for Dr. Pepper. So I was just like, child, my daddy is older now. So, but he's not, nothing's going on with him. He has like a slight knee situation. He's had an issue with his leg, but he still gets around very well. And as of right now, he's saying that he's not going to undergo surgery and all this other stuff. And I'm like, yeah, don't do that. Please don't. And right now, we definitely don't need that going on, because he and my brother are taking care of my mama. Like, don't nobody have time for two people to be down at the same time. So anyway, it's a lot going on. So that was something that stuck out to me. He lived for Dr. Pepper to the point of where they asked him if he wanted something to drink. He was like, yeah, Dr. Pepper. So they went and actually took him to a machine so that the nephew could talk to the doctor. Now, the doctor is somebody who actually grew up with them, and he has actually lived in the same apartment building that Ptolemy lived in, who was the great uncle. And he asked him earlier, like, he was like, do you remember when I used to come to your house or whatever? And he was like, no. He was like, you remember when you used to live when I used to live in your building? And he was like, no. He was like, well, do you remember one time when we was trick-or-treating, you used to give us apples and all this other stuff? He was like, no. And I'm like, child, please don't do this. So anyway, he was able to get him to go with the nurse so that she could buy him a Dr. Pepper, because he wanted that Dr. Pepper. So that gave the opportunity to present itself for the doctor and the great nephew to talk. And so he was like, look, I have a doctor friend who might be able to help him because, he's slipping. Because he tried to cut him off at the pass. He was like, look, I already know he's slipping. And he was like, man, it ain't just he's slipping. Like, this is like obvious, like early signs of dementia and whatnot. Like, the fact that he actually is doing better than us outside of that speaks volumes. Like, he's special in some regard, and doctors want to understand how is it that he's able to heal so fast, and like everything about him, like he is doing great. The doctor said, this came out of the doctor's mouth. The doctor said that Ptolemy is in better shape than the two of them combined. I was like, wait a minute now. Now, that is true though, because something that I used to find interesting about my grandmama, my paternal grandmother, was that she always kept a gallon bucket of sorbet ice cream in her deep freezer. She always had little sweets and all this other stuff. And I used to wonder, like, how is it that with my generation and like people who came after my grandmama, they made it seem like the food that we was eating is so terrible and all this other stuff. But it made sense because it's like, well, back then they weren't able to put as much crap in the food. They were literally out there slaughtering the animals and picking the stuff from their gardens. And my grandmama was still doing that. My grandmama had fig trees around her house. She had turnip greens, which I hate. I don't know what it is. Even though turnips and mustard greens are alkaline, it's too pungent for me. I don't care what you do to calm it down. I don't even want to get into that. But anyway, she had that, had chickens, she had a banana tree. Like, she had all of this stuff. We had pecan trees, corn, sweet potatoes, plums, persimmons. All this stuff was just growing around her house and in the pastures that surround our, properties. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense as to why they seem to be doing so much better than us, because we were exposed to all the chemicals and crap versus what they were, exposed to. So anyway, y'all, I'm sorry. Stuff like this is very interesting to me. And this show was tearing my nerves up. I ain't gonna lie. But anyway, so the great nephew ended up getting information from the doctor. And he was like, look, I have a doctor friend. He wants to like kind of see where he is. And we want y'all to be there so y'all could talk to him to see what's going on. Because he basically wants to put him into like this study or something and see if it can kind of help him. Because he thinks that with everything else that goes so amazingly well with him, he might be a great candidate for this study. And so he was like, okay, I'll talk to him about it and I'll, let him know and we'll set the appointment or whatever. So they leaving and they walking, and he has this moment where he becomes very lucid or whatever. And he's thinking that he is seeing who we find out is his deceased wife. And the woman pretty much kind of looked like her, except the woman is thicker or whatever. And she's walking by, and he over here done went off. He like touched the woman's shoulder. The woman was like, "Don't you get your hands." I was like, oh gosh. And she was younger too. So I was like, Lord, how did the wife die? I need to know what is going on. But it was too much. But even before that situation even popped off, he thought that he was seeing this person who he sees throughout the entire show. I feel like we're going to see this person throughout the entire show. Now, he was playing, if y'all ever saw Black Lightning, the guy who was like the police chief or whatever, he's playing, I don't know if it's supposed to be his daddy or what. He's somebody who was basically older than him in the flashbacks most of the time. But at first they kept showing him at his normal age and then showing the guy back then is what he would look like back then. But there were times where they showed him where it was obviously him that he was talking to. And I'm like, okay, so he was a child. Is this his daddy or this an uncle or who it is? It seemed like it's a daddy or somebody, some kind of father figure. So he's talking to him, sadly enough, in a way where you have to be aware of your surroundings. I don't know if they grew up in Georgia, but like I told y'all before, this is based in Atlanta, where we see him at right now. So I'm like, if you know anything about Georgia, I don't understand why people be moving in droves to go to Georgia, because Georgia is still the same as it was back then. You will find yourself dead somewhere with your organs removed if you don't get home when you need to get home. I would rather not be driving through Georgia or any of these southern states, any sundown towns or anything like that. After the sun go down, I'm sorry, it's still the same. Lake Lanier, all that stuff exists for a reason. That's all I'm gonna say. If you know, you know. That's all I'm gonna say. Put down in the comment section if you know what I'm talking about, because I ain't gonna sit up here and act like it's not a nice place to visit, some of the areas or whatever, but it still got some stuff with it. I ain't got time for it. Stuff still be happening to this day that y'all might not hear about, but I be seeing the news reports on these people who still be coming up missing. All their organs and stuff be gone. And it's like, why? Because it's the South. Because it's Georgia. Georgia is one of the most infamous states that be doing the most. But anyway, so he done sat up here, told me, he done sat up here, walked out in the middle of traffic. Somebody had to slam on his brakes, almost hit him because he thought he saw the man who was like his daddy or whatever. Like, he really calls this man by the name, his name or his nickname, and he thinks he's seeing him. And so the nephew like, oh, what you doing? You almost got yourself killed. So the man that hopped out the car and set it off, and he was like, man, he just old. Like, calm down. It was an accident. Then got into it with this man, and then this is when he ends up seeing the woman who looks like his wife. I'm like, Lord, don't nobody have time. He done touched this woman, the woman that set it off. I'm like, Lord, he had to apologize on his behalf to her. So anyway, he ends up taking him back to the house, and he was like, look, I'm putting this on your TV. This is the time for your next appointment. If I'm not able to take you, this is where it's going to be. This is the time. This is the place. This is who you're going to see. He was like, okay. He was like, okay. So he has his groceries. It is what it is. He at the house. And so he has this thing where he tells him, you're going to lock the boat. And so I'm pretty sure the way he is saying it is pretty much like my daddy. He's talking about a bolt, the lock bolt on the door. And they just have a thing where he has to make sure he locks the door behind him because I think he's trying to have it where he still has some sort of independence despite everything that's going on with him. So he's not like requiring that he gives him a key. Now, if he has a copy, he doesn't use it. He respects him as a man and he allows him to come to the door and figure out that it's him and then open it on his own volition. So yeah, but yeah, he at the house, and Reggie gone, and we just end up seeing him having these moments again where we trying to figure out, okay, what's going on, and like he really is in his feelings, he really going through. So then we see the days go by where he is eating can of bean here, a can of bean there, and I'm like, okay, interesting, what's going on? It gets to the point where he run out of beans, and so he start kind of losing his mind, like, okay, where Reggie at? I don't think I got no more beans left. I'm like, Lord, please don't do this. Don't nobody need this man to starve and die. Like, Lord, don't nobody have time for this. So one day, he sleep. He dead to the world. And he get a knock at the door. He trying to understand what's going on. Like, he sleep in the middle of the day. All of this. So this boy, I need to look it up. I don't know if he just kind of looked like him with the glasses off or what. But y'all know, Dear White People, the guy who was playing the gay dude, who what's his name? Leon or something? I forgot. Anyway, the guy who was playing the gay dude, that was like friends with Sam. What's his name? Leon? I don't remember. But anyway, it looked like him, but he got like these messy, like had him in too long braids, individual braids or whatever. And so he's trying to get him to open the door. And he looking like, who are you? He's talking about, I'm Hilliard. And the way he said it at first, he said Hilly, and then he said Hillard. And I'm like, what? And then when he said it again, I was like, is he saying Hilliard? Okay. So his nephew, Reggie, ended up making like this chart or this blow up situation of pictures of family members so that he knows who it is if he's having a moment where he's not really aware or he's confused as to who's at the door. And so he over here explaining, your sister's daughter's son is who I am. And so he saw the little thing and he had to tell him, like, go over to the wall. You'll see a picture of me and whatever. He was like, how you know what I got in my house? He was like, because I done been to your house before. It's been a long time, but I went there. I've been there. So he ended up going over to the wall, realizes it's him. He sees him. Then he go to the door, look out there, see it's him. So it's like looking at him like, man, get out the way. Because like I told y'all before, he has this thing where he'll just stand in the door instead of understanding, let me move to the side and let somebody enter. So he tried to tell the man to get out the way and all this other stuff. He come in instantly and start touching stuff. He just said, man, stop touching all my stuff. So he was like, well, I came to take you to the house. I got to take you over there to the house and whatever. And he looking like, okay, I got to get my stuff because, today we got to go to the bank. So he was like, oh, you got to go to the bank too? Okay, cool. So he ended up, like, all this time they were showing him, like, going through, and the nephew, after the nephew left, it kept showing piles of mail being, like, thrown into the door through that little slot. And it's just hitting the floor and piling up. Well, it gets to a point where eventually he picks it up and then he looking through it and he knows what a familiar envelope looks like. And one of them is a check. Well, he was like, yeah, I got to go to the bank. He has 3 different checks he cashes. One is Social Security. One is from the deceased wife. And the other one is his pension from a job that he used to work. And I'm trying to understand, y'all, I'm mad. I'm like, okay, unless y'all saying $300 each, which I don't think they saying, combined, this man get $300. And I'm like, y'all ain't trying to tell me this man get $300 a month. That's what y'all not finna tell me. Because I know back home, everybody that's on Social Security that I know of, the bare minimum, they be getting 6 something or 7 something a month. And I'm just like, that still ain't enough. But I mean, I get what you're saying. I'm just like, don't tell me this man getting $300 a month combined out of these 3 checks. So anyway, as soon as they leave out the building, some woman from across the street that rolled up to me, I need my money. He need to give me my money. Da, 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 da. So the nephew that set it off was like, man, if you don't get out from over here. And so he had to set it off on her. And so he was like, who is that? And so he was like, I don't know her. I don't owe her money, whatever. Child, they end up walking because the nephew doesn't have a car and they're going to go and catch the bus. So they walking because he's telling him, well, he was like, well, what bank you go to? He was like, I'll show you how to get there. So they walking, and because Ptolemy is who he is, he don't know what's going on. I don't know if a bank actually was there before or not, but they basically went to like a washateria at this point or something else that's not a bank. So he was like, man, this ain't no bank. So he rolled up on him and he like, okay, let me see where the bank is so we can go to the right location. So he opening up one of the envelopes, trying to figure out what bank, is on the checks. Then the police roll up, Atlanta PD. Child, he, told me like, oh, wait. If nothing else sticks with him, he know what it means when you see the police. So he's seeing them and he looking at them like, oh, no, look. So he was like, do we have a problem over here? So he kind of froze up. And then the nephew was like, Hilliard was like, man, this is some foolishness. And because he wasn't able to respond right away, they over here thinking he might be up to no good, trying to scam him, whatever. Man, they'd have hemmed him up. And so he is trying to remember that this is my niece's son. So he is supposed to be here. He is supposed to be taking me to my nephew, Reggie. But he is the one who is supposed to be taking me to him. He does have a right to be with me in this moment. They didn't ask for this boy's ID and all this other stuff. So he done showed him the ID, whatever. They finally let him go. So they didn't hemmed him up because he already looked like he's a suspect anyway. And he probably is for other stuff. We ain't even going to get into that right now because anyway. So they end up going to the bank. So he was like, okay. He done let him fill out the stuff. And so he going to take the stuff up there to the window for him. So the woman who normally sees him rolled up on him with the nephew and was like, hi, do you remember me? And he was like, yes. And so she was like, this person says that they are allowed to cash these checks for you and whatever. So he has to go through this whole process of explaining who this boy is to him and that he does have, the authority to do this. Tell me why this random heifer, and I know I'm wrong, it's probably going to end up being something significant later on, I guess. I hope so, because I was like, ma'am, this random heifer done rolled up on him while the nephew walked off to my son. I'm here to pay a phone bill, my phone bill or some bill of hers. And she talking about she is $40 short. And so she wanted to know if he could help her out with the money until she get her Social Security check in a couple of days or whenever she's supposed to get her Social Security check. And so she ends up undoing like this handkerchief that has a nice like opal ring in it that was like passed down from generation to generation. And when I tell y'all, I looked at that thing and my jaw dropped because I love opal. Like I kind of wish that was my birthstone too, because I love my birthstone. Amethyst is everything. It is it's everything. But I love opal. And I think it's something else that kind of reminds me of opal. If it's not opal, y'all, I might be saying it incorrectly. So yeah, after the nephew got the money, he done rolled up in the envelope and then took like $200 or close to $200 about it and pocketed it. And I was just like, you know what? Ooh, child, he made me want to reach through the screen because I'm like, what we not finna do is take advantage of the elderly. And he kin to you. Like, people are so trash. People are so trash. And that is why, at least in my case, I would rather have dealings with people who ain't even kin to me in most situations than people who are blood related to me, because they will stab you in the back faster than anybody else. And it's just like, you want to say blood thicker than water, but I mean, whatever. I'm just saying, a lot of people are trash. A lot of people are trash. Be grateful and blessed if you do have family that ain't trash. So anyway, he over here pocketing money. So he basically decided he was going to get a woman the money. And he was like, here, take what you need out of there. So she was like, I'm just going to take an even 50 because all she needed was 40. And so he was like, okay. So he took the envelope back with the remaining money and was like, okay, here is, and this is your blessing or something. And he gave her the ring back. And so she's looking like, whoa, wait a minute. So I'm guessing he was just like, I'm just going to consider this to be like me blessing somebody, whatever it is, what it is. So I was like, okay, then you done went on. So he on the bus and he like, where the rest of my money at? And like, oh, rip, he's telling him, I know you a thief. I know you stole it. He gonna sit up here trying to say, well, that woman took that money. You gave her that money. I think I saw her take almost $200. So she the one who got the money. He was like, no, I saw her take $50. You got my money. So he tired of his spirit. So they end up getting off the bus at some point, and then they're walking up to, I guess, his mama's house. So I'm looking outside and I'm peeping the scene, and I'm like, I know this ain't what I think it is, because I ain't got time. I'm really like, I'm tired of my spirit. I'm really hoping that this is not what's going on. Y'all, he walks into the house and you could tell that everybody is in funeral attire. And I'm like, man, I know this man did not die. What is going on? So they walking him through the house. The woman who is the mama to this trifling boy who been stealing money from the great uncle greeted him, was like, hey, how you doing? Of course, he trying to figure out where Reggie at, because he lived for Reggie, and Reggie was like the only person who lived for him. So he was like, where Reggie at? And so she was like, oh, we'll let you see him in a little while. And so she ended up introducing him to this girl who she took in, who is her best friend's child. Her best friend is deceased. She got killed or died or whatever. And the baby daddy, her father was killed, I think, some time back or whatever. So she pretty much is an orphan. So she was like, let me take it upon myself to take this child in. It is what it is. Child ended up introducing the two of them. And she was like, go and fix him a plate and all this other stuff. She kind of acting like, the typical somewhat rebellious child, but I'm living here, so let me go do what this person told me to do. So she went to go fix him a plate, asking him if he wants certain things. So after she was done fixing the plate, he went to reach for the plate, and then the plate fell, and she kind of got messed up a little bit or whatever. And so this guy came from out of nowhere, who I know him from somewhere, and I can't think of where I know him from, but he came over there and he told the girl to go and, clean herself up, because he was startled and he felt bad about the fact that the food fell, and it just was what it was. So anyway, he rolled up on him and was like, hey, how you doing? It's okay. It's okay, Mr. Gray, whatever. And so he trying to figure out how he know about him. He was like, oh yeah, I think he said his name is Philly Fred or something like that. I think he might be like one of Reggie's friends, or I don't know if he's related or whatever, but he seems like a good friend to the family. So he ended up fixing him a plate. He really likes chicken thighs. Something terrible. He loves chicken thighs. So Reggie actually, when they went to go to the doctor and all that stuff, he actually took him to some place where they had eaten. And when they had ate or whatever, everything was fine. And the woman was like, he needs to eat more. Has he been eating enough? And he was like, I mean, he eats mainly when I'm around him. He was like, she said, he need to be eating more. I was like, ma'am, you done went off. So, but he had completely forgotten that he had just ate. And he had asked him, did he want dessert? So then he was like, when they gonna bring them thighs out? So then it's like he really realized like he going through. And so he ended up calling back there and was like, can y'all bring out another order of thighs? And I'm like, child, this is so sad. Like, it is so sad So anyway, back to the present time. Everybody who is meeting, he's like, where Reggie at though? Where he at though? And so then the girl, whose name is Robin, she ends up leading him through the house, and then we eventually encounter Reggie's wife and children, and they're like in this bedroom. And I don't know if this is what it is or not, because it's Atlanta, and a lot of stuff in Atlanta, Georgia, and like a lot of other southern states are kind of set up the same. I think that house was old enough to be considered like somewhat of a shotgun house because of the way that everything kind of leads back straight through to like a lot of these rooms. They were in there and they were looking distraught. I was like, Lord, don't nobody have time. So anyway, the wife greeted him, and he acted like he was kind of remembered who they were. It's like, oh yeah, hey, how y'all doing? Whatever. Like, he is giddy. Like, he was sitting over there eating his plate and everything. The little girl, Robin, was like, look at him just over there eating like a fool. And I'm like, girl. Anyway, he finally gets to the final destination because he wanted to see Reggie. And he ended up seeing Reggie. Reggie was laid up in the house in a casket. And he was like, what is going on? Why he laid up here like that? He done went off. I said, Lord, somebody please. And so she was like, didn't nobody call you? Didn't nobody tell you? He was like, I don't think so. I don't think nobody called me. I don't think nobody said nothing to me. I was like, oh God, somebody please. Somebody please. Y'all don't understand how many times I about cried throughout this whole episode when stuff was popping off, especially during this part. Man, that man realized his nephew was laid up there dead. He wanted to know what happened, when, what is going on. But the saddest part about all of this is when he was leaving the house. He talking about, when we gonna see Reggie? I said, oh God, no, this don't make no sense, Lord. Somebody please do something. So the girl was like, I'm gonna take you to the bus and I'm gonna make sure you get home okay. So they end up going to the house, and he literally is trying to, figure out what's going on. He don't really know if Reggie, like 1 minute it's like he know Reggie dead, and the next minute he don't. I was like, Lord, this is too much. This is too much. But that's how the episode ended, y'all. I'm sorry that this was so long, but there's just so many moving parts. It's just so good. This show is so good. Oh my gosh. It is raw. It is everything. I live for it. Samuel Jackson, y'all. I ain't even gonna say it. But anyway, that was the episode. Hopefully y'all enjoyed my recap review of it. I'm about to come back with the second episode. So y'all stay tuned. Y'all have a good one. I will be back with that. I don't know if I'm going to do anything else after that before I start back work on Friday. But I'll be around. All right, y'all have a good one. I will see y'all later on. Take care. Bye.